hoping it's Reason Day. Welcome to Reason Day. How many of you Reason subscribers or friends of Reason? God bless each and every one of you, even Gene Epstein, for birthing such a great son and also being a champion of freedom yourself. And if those of you in the greater New York area, Gene is inaugurating a great series of debates in which people who generally hate each other, sometimes they're both libertarians, as in the case of Nick Gillespie and Walter Block, will just argue and tear each other's throat out. Who else is Heather McDonald? Come on up. Get on up here. This is Reason Day. It's all informal. Go to that mic. Here, go to that mic. It's right there. It's hot.
Thank you, Matt. Matt is a Brooklynite, and he's going to come. September 19th, we're going to have a debate between Heather McDonald and Tim Lynch of Cato. Heather McDonald has written a book about the war on cops causing crime. And Tim Lynch disagrees with her. It's a very divisive issue among conservatives and libertarians, the role of cops in causing crime or in reducing crime, and that's going to be the September 19th debate. The one you don't want to miss is November 1st, when Nick Gillespie is going to square off with Walter Block. Walter Block thinks libertarians should all vote for Trump, and Nick has his own thoughts on that. And so there's going to be a smackdown on that. And and in order to register, just write this down, thesohoforum.org, thesohoforum.org, SOHO forum.org. And if you're in Lower Manhattan on September 19th or November 1st, you're going to want to come. Those are two of the key events, thesohoforum.com. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Gene. Jim, can you get this guy out of here? Just So welcome to Reason Day. We have three great panels for you, or at least two, the two after this. It should be really good here in this room. I'm Matt Welch, editor-at-large. I was the editor of the magazine until a couple of weeks ago. And part of the reason why I am no longer the editor of the magazine was because this political season was too damned interesting for me to sit around and edit other people's words for it. So I've been kind of jumping into it and enjoying myself. I went to my first Libertarian Party convention. How many of you were there this time around? Oh yeah, we're in. Nick Sarwark is a hero. Among men, of the way that he calmly handles those proceedings. Although I also like Nick Gillespie's moderating style, as well, as evidenced by yesterday's Trumpably. Let's imagine Gillespie moderating or chairing a Libertarian Party convention. That would just be a perfect storm of man boobs and drug Adderall problems. I've just been having conversations, many of them with you in this room. There seems, anecdotally, as Nick and I were talking about this morning in the big hall, it's been interesting to observe the cycle of suicidal depression back in February to like, zing, everyone wakes up the moment that the Indiana primary is over and they realize, wait, we have 6 months of these two assholes running for president, and that from that moment on, there was a super heightened interest in a way that I don't really think that we've seen. We'll get Nick to talk about this in a second, in the Libertarian Party, maybe ever, or at least in a hell of a long time. Those of you who've been involved in the party for longer than I've been alive, that's probably not possible, but can maybe correct me on that. But there's just been a super heightened interest in the conversations in the hallways here. A lot of chatter about Gary Johnson, William Weld, and what can happen here. And so I figured that what we would do is sort of talk informally about mostly that, although happy to take anything wherever the conversation goes, but also to maximize the conversation between all of us, because I don't know about you, but I'm sick of listening to me, and even more sick of listening to Nick Gillespie, and we can maybe get an interesting conversation going. But just to set the stage, before I let Nick Sarwark, who's the chair of the Libertarian National Committee, come up and kind of answer my own question here. 4 years ago today, imagine this, today, July 15th, the Gary Johnson campaign was organizing a pathetic protest outside CNN in Atlanta. That I don't know if there was a name of the protest, but the essential idea was, please cover us. You never cover us. Obviously, CNN has become the venue where Johnson and Weld were given a town hall for 90 minutes. how they performed at that town hall might be another question, but they certainly got their ideas out there to a whole number of people. I talked to Gary Johnson just before he went on there and asked him to kind of like give a sense of the difference between, I'm sorry, who are you? Security?
I'm stage bombing. I'm sorry about being late.
He said that, and I was like, describe to me your world 4 years ago compared to your world today. And he said, and I'm not going to do my Gary Johnson impersonation yet because I didn't have enough margaritas, but he said that 4 years ago they would have spent a week making 15 concerted pitches to various media organization to squeeze out maybe after one whole week one interview, and this year they're fielding 20 media requests a day, and they can't possibly fulfill them all. So it's a completely different situation. If you look back at the polls that were taken 4 years ago, in the month of July 2012, so we already know who the Libertarian nominee is, and he's a former governor and this whole kind of thing. Gary Johnson, as far as I can tell, was included in 2 national polls for the month of July in the presidential year in which he was a nominee there. In the last calendar month, he's been included in at least 19 national polls. Here, he's come in double digits in about 5 of those, probably averaging around 7 or 8. He's been in the double digits for a couple this week. So it's categorically different, and I think pretty interesting when mapped onto the fact that the 2 major party presidential candidates are historically unpopular or untrusted. I was looking for I think an MSNBC thing that I was doing. They wanted to talk about the white vote for some reason, and I don't spend a lot of time thinking about the white vote or caring, but just was looking at crosstabs and figuring there's got to be some core of Donald Trump support that think he's a really great guy. And if you take white, not college-age males, so me and people like me, but if you take that cohort that's supposed to love Trump so much, a strong majority think that he's temperamentally unqualified to be president. These are his supporters. So this is just such a weird black swan year that any number of things seem possible. So to continue setting the stage and just to make Nick Gillespie feel maximally uncomfortable, I want to bring up Nick Sarwark from the Libertarian National Committee. You give us like a few minutes of just a stage setting on how different your world is, the LP's world is right now from 4 years ago, and maybe even start at just like compare the ranks of your parties to the ranks of other parties a couple years ago. Nick Sarwark.
Only in Las Vegas do you get bonus Nick. So, thank you so much. I was totally going to drink that. So, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Nicholas Sarwark. I'm chairman of the Libertarian Party. I will be giving a talk later at 2:40 in Wilshire B. I am an audience stealer on diversifying your political investment. And some of these things will touch on that a little bit because I just have notes, so that's always good.
Wait, you have notes for an appearance that...
No. There are certain statistics that I have
Okay.
that I had already written down.
When you bought it. Right?
Yeah, they come with speeches now.
Yeah.
Men's Warehouse will do anything.
It's like a bonus thing. They used to give you rebates. The Libertarian Party is at the apex of where we have ever been. We have been toiling in the wilderness as the only political party that is dedicated to all of your freedoms all of the time for almost 45 years. It'll be 45 years in December. And we're winning. I mean, that simply put, we're winning. And I think every one of you, I know actually quite a few of you in this room, deserve a round of applause for yourselves for lasting this long. So please clap. That national convention in Orlando was the largest we've ever had. We had 1,000 delegates, give or take a couple, in the room. We have nominated just fundamentally, objectively, the most qualified presidential ticket that in my lifetime, let alone for 2016. I mean, you have the chairman of one of the 2 old parties patting himself on the back right now because he managed to get a guy that almost finished a term as governor to be the bottom of the ticket with a reality show star. Our ticket only has like 16 years of executive experience. You know, just, but you know, if you're in an old party, you take what you can get. So we have an opportunity this year to present ourselves to the American people, not just as pure principled people who believe that everyone has a right to pursue happiness any way they choose as long as they don't hurt anyone else or take their stuff, but as the right choice for a country that you care about, because you're interviewing somebody for a job that's arguably the most important, and you have 2 unqualified candidates and 1 eminently qualified candidate. So you need to get past party label, and you need to start doing what's right for America. That's really the pitch of the Libertarian Party here in 2016, and it's been paying dividends. I mean, we had 3% membership growth in dues-paying party members in the last 2 weeks. You know, we're on track to bring in over 100% more money than we have in past election years. Inquiries are through the roof. The press conference after the nomination was almost as many reporters were there as there are people in this room, and probably 8 TV cameras. You know, I had to cut off the guy from the Wall Street Journal because Gary Johnson had been speaking for 10 minutes and he needed to break because it was a busy convention. That has never happened for the Libertarian Party before. So I'm so excited and happy to be going into uncharted waters with all of you, because I think that we really have an opportunity to kill one or both of the old parties and actually make a political party in America that Americans can be proud of.
That's very nice. Don't sit down.
I'll take questions if you want, but otherwise I did promise Jason I would go see him because he's wearing the shirt I sold him.
Let me ask you one question before
Ask
you
me a
go.
question.
People, like a common outsider critique, and I think I've asked you this before, of the LP is like, yeah, you do your ballot access and then you focus on the presidential race. Why don't you guys like win some statewide races? What's wrong with you? There's actually interesting movement towards that in states like Washington. Can you speak to that briefly and then get the hell out of here?
Yeah, so we're getting past that. We've been toiling in the ballot access trenches for so long that we're really good at it now. And we're on track to be the only political party other than the 2 old ones with ballot access in all 50 states in the District of Columbia. So now that we're getting that under our belt and we're doing less and less of it and getting some laws changed and suing some people, we're moving on to things like, you know, looking at proposals to do analytics and demographic targeting to bring in members who look like us now that you can do micro-targeting and things of that nature. The people in Washington state have been great because they've taken something horrible, which is top 2 elections, and they've actually turned it to their advantage by being strategic about it. We run people in races where the old parties don't show up. And so, hey, guess who's one of the top 2? One of the only 2 people who ran, that's who. And so we make it into the general election by going where they're not. You know, we are still small enough, although that was the statistic I didn't read yet. If you go from October 2012 up through February of 2016, only 1 political party grew in partisan voter registration in the entire country. The Democrats are down, the Republicans are down, the Greens are down, the Constitution Party is down. Only the Libertarians are growing. We're the only political party in the country that's growing. That's just demographic fact.
Can you
Microphone, please.
Sorry. Where is the growth coming from? Like, who are the people signing up? Are they old people? Are they disaffected Republicans and Democrats? Or are they people who are being actualized into politics for the first time?
Mostly, the demographic split by former partisan registration is still at that third. People who are Republicans, people who are Democrats, and people who just hated politics. But the demographic split as far as gender and age dynamics, it's very young. I mean, we're getting the next generation. I use
Wait,
the term,
is it very young in real terms or in political terms? So is it like 60-year-olds or is it, I mean, it's millennials, right? You're
it's
talking
mostly
about?
millennials.
Yeah.
Did you know, is that a word Reason knows how to use, millennial?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, sometimes.
Do you do any polling on it?
No.
Oh, good.
No, absolutely not.
Um,
What, are you kidding? Who cares what they think?
So, and that's one of the reasons, you know, in party communication, we never say that M word before we talk about those 2 parties. We say old, because it's both accurate and It's
Pejorative.
accurate.
Thank you. That's really fascinating to hear.
Cool. Any other questions?
Quickly, audience.
Yeah, it is
before he goes.
All right. Now I have to. Now you're making me recognize
Okay,
people from
you've
the
got,
audience.
no, you know what?
I got to
okay.
go to a microphone.
You've got
too.
one, you get one question.
One question.
Okay.
Okay, one question.
All right.
Gary
Move fast.
Johnson right now is around 10 or 12% in some polls.
Mhm.
That's just under the threshold of the getting in the debates.
Right.
Have you talked to or heard from the debate people about whether they're going to cut you a little slack if it doesn't get all the way up to 15?
I have not talked to them directly. The last time I talked to Frank Fahrenkopf, it did not go well. I do not particularly like that man. It was about 6 years ago, and he's not on my Christmas card list.
Can I
You're
comment
suing
on
them.
this?
Let's be clear
I'm-
about this.
We're actually suing them twice. Once we're suing them under antitrust theory with our American Initiative and Fair Debates, and we're also suing the FEC to make them enforce their stupid campaign finance laws against a bipartisan campaign commercial. So yeah, I don't think I'm on his Christmas card list either.
Last night, Rand Paul said if Gary is at 14.999%, they won't let him in.
Oh, absolutely. I think that so we don't have good conversations with him, but I firmly believe that the CPD will cheat with both hands to keep Gary Johnson out if there's any way that they can. They've said that you have to have 5 polls with 15%. They haven't said which 5 it's going to be, and I would not be surprised in the least if they picked only 5 polls that didn't include him. That is how corrupt the CPD is.
Well, will you consider that a win if, they obviously do everything possible to break their own rules to keep them out?
Yeah, and then you know what else is going to be a win? Last time, how many sponsors did we get to boycott, Joe? How many sponsors did we get to pull
I
out?
think there were 3 that pulled
3
out.
major corporate sponsors that we got to pull their economic support from the CPD because turns out companies like to be civic minded. They don't like to be part of bipartisan campaign commercials that are corrupt and trying to exclude other voices. And when you remind them that their customers don't really appreciate that, all of a sudden they take their money away. And this time we intend to make sure that every single sponsor pulls out if they try and keep us out.
And emphasize also, it's 100% run by Democrats and
It's been former chairs of the DNC and RNC for as long as I remember.
Quick statement, please.
They called it
and then-
fraud on the American people. Anyhow, I'm running for Utah State Senate as a Libertarian. Woohoo! Is anybody else
Good
a
for
local
you.
Libertarian candidate? Sweet. So, Nick, one of the ways I fear they may screw with us in the CPD is where Gary's polling at 10, 12%, it's my understanding those are 3 candidate polls. If they start polling Jill Stein, it looks like about 4% pulls away from Gary to Jill. In other words, he's picking up on anybody but Trump, anybody but Hillary. So you think they're going to start polling for 4 candidates now?
Yeah, I think you'll go from 2
Yeah.
to 4 in a lot of polls. I mean, they're going to do whatever they can, and this is, and I will end with this and let you guys actually have the stage you paid for. This is fundamentally the libertarian thing, right? Being in the Libertarian Party means the old parties cheat and we win anyway. That's what it means. So yeah, if they pull all 4, then we're going to spend the money and run the ads to make sure that we go over 15% in all 4. We're running between 10 and 16% depending on the state. We're running 12% nationally. We're going to get this thing. We're not giving up. We're not going away. And like I tell people, I got a 2-year plan, but I've got a 20-year plan too, because I've got little kids and they're going to grow up in a freer country than I did. So with that, I'll give these guys back their stage. If you want to hear more from me, I'll be in Wilshire B at 2:40.
Well,
Thanks,
thank
guys.
you. Thank you so much.
I'll be there too.
I'm going to wait until Nicholas leaves the room before I start harshing his buzz here. There are, oh yeah, although he's got to fill up his water too.
Oh, look at this. Isn't it enough?
So Gallup in 2012 looked at the history of midsummer third-party polling. Since a lot of you have been coming up to me and saying, what are the chances that he gets to 15%? To which I've been answering very scientifically, 37.3% chance. I don't think it's that high. The average third-party showing in June or July, May, that period, ends up being more than twice as high on average than what happens in November, historically. And there aren't very many exceptions to that rule. Ross Perot was polling pretty good this time around, both in 92 and 96, worse in 96, obviously, but it undercuts. Historically, that's because people, as elections get close, they freak out and they think about the Supreme Court, as many people maybe in this room have been coming up and talking to me about, and other types of things. We have a two-party country and a tradition, and it's kind of hard to let go of the modes of thinking that get you there. And then sometimes elections are close, and people remember 2000 happened on at least one side of the aisle, and they freak out about things. So generally speaking, historically speaking, that has been the case. The big but to that, again, is that we haven't ever seen, if there was no Donald Trump, the highest, the candidate, major party candidate with the biggest negatives in the history of modern polling would be Hillary Clinton. But now there's Donald Trump, so it's 1 and 2. We've never seen people this hated. They are distrusted by 2/3 of the American population. So yes, these things could happen in theory, and 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 things have to go right from now, one of which is just it's such a WTF year, something strange could happen. It's interesting to note, and your question, Utah, where's Utah? There he is. The question about, it'll be terrible if Jill Stein is put in the polls. She's going to be on 40 ballots. She should be in those polls. And it's the number isn't like 4 percentage points. It's more like 2 or 3. One of the polls that came out this week with Johnson at 10% was a 4-way poll. So when she started being regularly polled, there was a noticeable hit. It kind of went from him being around 9 or 10 to being around 6 or 7, but now that's kind of going up. I'm getting into the minutiae of polls, but that's because it's fun.
That's real fun.
It's super duper fun. So there are reasons to be skeptical about this going forward. I've been talking, other Nick has been talking, but not this Nick. Nick, do you want to just talk?
Not particularly.
Yeah,
what I would like to do is to, if we can field questions from
let's just
people.
have a
But
conversation
the
about
other, Dan, look at these 2 wonderful Reason supporters fighting it out. There's plenty of microphone to go around. But before we get to that, I mean, one of the things, and this came up in the comments that Matt and I were making earlier this morning, and also on the final panel, et cetera, think about this election. We're all libertarians in this room, and it's not necessarily about who gets elected. It's about what policies get put into place. And that is where the real action is here. And we have the real opportunity, I think, in election 2016 is not so much Johnson and Weld, which is wonderful, and great, and a disruptive factor in the way we talk about stuff, but it is, we are starting to have the adult conversation about the size, scope, and spending of government. And it is being foregrounded partly because Hillary and Donald Trump are the same thing. They are like 2 hideous monsters, that are just like eating each other's faces. And then there's that broad middle that I think libertarians are speaking to. So for me, that's the real excitement of this election.
It's interesting to note how in 2009, in January, Barack Obama gave an interview with the Washington Post saying that if we kick the can down the road on entitlements, my presidency should be judged a failure. Yeah. And 1 month ago, Obama said, you know what, let's expand Social Security. Yeah. Screw it, Bernie's right. Both parties have given up on this idea of any kind of long-term budget outlook thing. And as Nick was pointing out to me in casual conversation this morning backstage, what percentage of the budget is on autopilot? Like 74?
75%.
75% of the federal budget is on autopilot, and the share just grows.
It's called, mandatory spending. It is not subject to annual review. It keeps going and going and going. So, basically at a $4 trillion, Congress plays around with a $1 trillion.
And there was some politics, including in both parties, enough to lead to the sequestration cuts, or the year on year there was a cut on defense spending. It happened, military spending. Sorry, that happened because people were talking about long-term entitlement reform. They just stopped talking about it. This is the year, the marker where there aren't anyone even pretending to be adults
in the old parties, not the major parties. I'm learning to correct my language here. And that's pretty interesting given that the Libertarians have people who foreground that issue. And with that, ask a question, make
Dan,
a comment.
please.
Let's go.
Okay, so this is taking the longer view, a little bit longer view. As you guys would know, I was pretty active in the Libertarian Party a long time ago, and I was national vice chair in 2000 or something. And during that time, I read this book, which I recommend to everyone, called Third Parties in America. You can find it on Amazon. And it's the history of all the third parties. And themes that come out of that, I really learned a lot from it, was that because we have a winner-take-all system, you're going to get two major parties. That has happened in every country of the world where it's winner-take-all elections. And so what you have in third parties in America in history is two kinds. The party that forms around a person or a personality, and the party that forms around an ideology. And so you had the Socialist and Communist Party, and you've had the Environmentalist Party, which is an ideology, and you had the Libertarian Party, which is an ideological party, clearly, and has survived because it is have the ideology of the founding fathers, but that's what keeps it going when it doesn't get power. So looking ahead, it seems like, and there's only been one time in American history when two parties changed, and that was around the Civil War, right? The Whig Party and the Republican Party. So if there's anything that's going to happen besides what just happens in this election, it seems like there has to be a reforming of major parties. And what I'd like you guys' thoughts of, what are the possibilities the Republican Party splits into a personality-focused Trumpian party and a libertarian wing, and if that happens, or a libertarian or another wing, if that happens, should the Libertarian Party seek to form a big tent with the splintered off Republican Party?
That's a fascinating question, and I'm going to do my damn well best to dodge it.
Yes.
Because I don't want to make predictions. I just want to add color to it, which is that the Never Trump movement, which might be the single most pathetic ideological expression of the last 12 months, is there a single thing that the Never Trumpers didn't get disastrously wrong? And I'm not even talking about David French here. Who remembers the David French bubble? That was a great week.
Where, what was it, Memorial Day weekend, where Bill Kristol, a power broker in the Republican Party, the Weekly Standard started in like 1995, and they were like the Florida Marlins of political magazines, where the Marlins won 2 World Series in their first 10 years. The Weekly Standard started 2 wars in their first 10 years. I was like, okay, that's pretty good. Bill Kristol teased out over the Memorial Day weekend, like, oh, we got a really big announcement. Like, we're bringing out the third-party guy. This is the independent guy who's going to save us all. And it was not even like a first-tier reporter for National Review.
Yeah,
They're done.
my brain has that Bill Kristol is the Wayne Huizenga of American politics, which makes me happier than you can possibly imagine. But so imagine libertarians making common cause with the most active of the Never Trumpers. The most active of the Never Trumpers are neoconservatives. There's a problem there. Yeah. And it's the most active of the Never Trumpers are people whose favorite politician is Tom Cotton. Tom Cotton, who wants to bomb Iran as soon as humanly possible, and who, as I mentioned this morning, thinks that we have an under-incarceration problem. He's gleefully stepping into the breach of the worst type of interventionist politics. So it will be hard because they hold on to those values so strong. It's great to watch how people who have been warning about Trump and on the Republican side talk themselves into not supporting Johnson. My favorite one of this is that he's not libertarian enough, says the neoconservative. I've heard this a lot. Like, he wants he wants to bake the Nazi cakes or whatever the thing is.
He wants to force Jews to bake Nazi wedding cakes.
And, which happens a lot, let's be honest.
By the way, have any of you ever been invited to a Nazi wedding? I don't know, I guess where you honeymoon, it's a very strange thing. And just to wrap that up, I think the Libertarian Party should fuse with, if there is a rump Republican Party, and they can come towards the Libertarians, and I think you would see that with people like Rand Paul and Thomas Massey and Justin Amash and even people like Mike Lee. These are people, the best part of the Republican Party, they actually believe in ideas. and they have some principles, and they want to bring them into play. And that's part of what's exciting about this particular election.
But I would hope that they would be joined by the Jared Polises, the Beto O'Rourke's, some of the more libertarian Democrats. It is interesting to note that if you look at what the Johnson effect on the race, it really is 33% from Hillary, 33% from Trump, and these aren't made up numbers. Every single poll bears this out, and 33% of I wasn't going to vote, shoot me in the head people. So what that says about reforming political parties, I don't know. I'm trying to wrap my head around it too. Carey?
Yes, sir. About 90 minutes ago, I had a rather amazing experience at the McDonald's restaurant beside the hotel. Thank you.
This is the soft bigotry of low expectations.
Yes. And what happened was I was in line to order, and this guy beside me, he says, "What's that LP sticker you're wearing?"
Yep.
And I said, "That is the Libertarian Party. Where are you from?" He says, "My wife and I are from Baton Rouge, Louisiana." And I said, "Well, that stands for Libertarian Party. Have you ever heard of it?" And he said, "That's that Gary Johnson dude, isn't it?" And I said, "Yes, it is." And I said, "You've heard of him?" And he said, "Me and all of my friends are following him on social media now." I'm just thinking, oh my God. It's actually happening for us, folks. When guys like that in a line have heard of him and are actively following him, this is going to be a very interesting year.
If I can build on that, I was explaining to one of my colleagues who's in the back, I own a house in Oxford, Ohio, and the air conditioning, central air has been out, and I called two guys to give me different estimates. And in my garage, you go up into the attic to where the compressor, not the compressor, whatever, the furnace thing, the blower stuff. And in the obviously, I'm a very, very technically proficient male, so in my garage, I have a 2012 Gary Johnson lawn sign that I just stuck in the garage. And the first guy who came to give me an estimate, he was like, "Oh," he's like, you like Gary Johnson?" I was like, "Yeah, I do. I'm libertarian." He's like, "Oh, he's my guy." I'm like, I'm done with the Republicans. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go with this guy. So then the second guy comes, like the day after, and he's coming out down, he goes up into the attic and comes down, and he's like, "Oh, I'm going to vote for Gary Johnson. I'm a reformed Republican." And I was like, shit. So, and then their estimates came in, and they were like $100 within one another, and I'm like, I don't know what to do now. So.
Ask them
What's
about
the
Welch.
tiebreaker?
That's
I guess so. Yeah.
question. Or ask them about James Weeks, the
Yes.
stripper. That's the new litmus test. Sir, yes, sir.
I'm an optimistic libertarian, took reason from the 70s, ran for Congress in '82 and Assembly. And
you really don't look 82.
yeah,
I just want you to know that.
But frankly, I've been very disheartened, and I've loved FreedomFest, but very disheartened by the incredible enthusiasm expressed for Donald Trump. And it's been depressing. It might be a little different mix in this room, but just, anyway, disheartening at that enthusiasm. And am I nuts? Am I the only person? I would only vote for Johnson. I would never vote for Hillary or Trump. But am I the only person that thinks there's a chance that a Trump presidency, a good chance, could be worse for the country, for my grandchildren and for our future, than a Hillary presidency?
And it's going to be great for the world's Muslims, though, right? And I'm sure Matt has better comments on this. Trump is not going to win, which is not a happy thing, because if Hillary wins, that's bad. It all looks bad, but this is also, it will teach Americans to retreat from politics, and not to give up and let the politicians do what they want, but it will foreground the need to say politics should control as little of our lives as possible. He will be a disaster because he is an incompetent boob, and he will be. Matt was actually talking about this in the Trump, not Trump debate, and it's really true that the real problem with Trump, the real problem with Hillary is we know what she will do, and she knows how to do it. The real problem with Trump is that he will be a tool of his advisors. and they will get him to think he is making decisions for them. But I do think that the net effect of that, and I don't think he will win, but the net effect of it will be where people will say, look, this is why we want to have a smaller state, because we don't want to live in that kind of world. I mean, that's my take.
There's one theory my friend Camille Foster has about Trump, and he tries to talk me into saying that it's, I'm part of the elites who, don't like him because he doesn't speak pretty politics. He doesn't speak, and there's a total amount of truth to that. I mean, you talk about being disheartened at the pro-Trump sentiment here. Were you at the Trump speech last year? That was a big eye-opening experience. It obviously changed Jeff Tucker's life, that speech. Really, no, I saw Jeff right afterwards, and he was like, wow. I mean, he was trying to digest the whole thing. Camille's theory is that Trump will organize opposition if he was president. The whole world would suddenly, or the Congress would suddenly remember that executive power is bad, both sides, and that the press would suddenly remember that we should be a watchdog to presidents. And so it could be this sort of Nixon-Watergate theory. I know, listen, it's a theory, it's not mine.
Yeah.
There'd be a Nixon-Watergate thing where for a season, people would be pretty skeptical about the exercise of government power, and maybe that would be a hopeful thing. I get that, it's an interesting theory. My worry about this as someone who maintains, a part of my pinky toe in Europe, being married to a French girl, is that Trump has introduced a nasty strain of European politics into America. And once introduced, I'm afraid it's going to be with us. And I don't like that strain. It's a bad strain. It's the Le Pen nationalist, welfare state loving, kind of collectivist about other groups of people type of thing. And I didn't think that was really possible. That was the mistake that I made after seeing Trump here last year and thinking, okay, no one could possibly sit through 45 minutes of this man talking and ever want to do anything except laugh. And I was wrong about that. I was substituting my own aesthetic tastes for those of America, which is always a terrible mistake to do. So I'm afraid that even if he loses, he has shown the way. And that the only good thing about him showing the way is that, one, it makes Bill Kristol and the Wayne Huizengas of national politics. It makes them lose, which I'm happy. It blows up an elite that was corrupt. All of that is good. It kind of strikes a blow for a freer way of talking about stuff, even if it's talking badly. All of that's to the good, but I'm afraid that it also maybe will destroy the Republican Party, which is interesting. But still, we will have a sizable block of this type of politics, which I think is really antithetical to freedom and ugly to boot. I just don't think it has any lasting power. Yes, sir.
Okay. Most of the polls that I've seen show that if Gary Johnson and maybe Jill Steiner included, the gap between Trump and Hillary narrows somewhat.
Yes.
So that's a 1 or 2 point advantage to Trump. What I'm thinking is that the LP might suggest to the Trump people that a 3 or 4 way debate would help him and hurt Hillary. And if we get enough of Trump's people on board with that strategic idea, they might be more willing to include Gary Johnson in the debate. So just a thought.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea. Trump is also now dodging the Bernie Sanders debate, though. So
There's it's interesting that the national assumption, broadly speaking, is that Johnson pulls Trump supporters and helps Hillary. Did any of you see Rachel Maddow give an 11-minute campaign commercial for Gary Johnson? It was nuts. It was after Bill Weld was announced as a running mate. And because Rachel Maddow thought, great, this is going to hurt Trump. And you're right, the polls show that it narrows things down by about a percentage point, maybe a little bit more. However, they haven't really, that breaks down on the state level. It's different. So Utah is competitive. It should never be competitive. It's been a hugely Republican state forever. But Utah is competitive in part because there's a real never Trump action there among Republicans, and they will go to Gary Johnson. He's polling as high as 16% in Utah, which is crazy. So on the state level, he might throw states, I think, maybe more in that direction, although if he tips anything in the Northeast, then he'd be pulling it away from Hillary. It's unclear, but the assumption is from people that it's from Hillary. So I think that they're looking possibly for Hillary donors to be thinking, hey, throw us some money because it's going to help, when in fact we don't have any evidence that that's the case, which is interesting.
Yeah, wonder if y'all might have any suggestions on how we might influence the messaging strategy of the Johnson-Weld campaign.
What are you disappointed about?
I'm disappointed that we're getting a fruit salad approach to libertarianism,
Yeah.
which is just a random collection of issues where it's all right in a solo speech by Gary that he can enumerate them all, but it completely disintegrates in like that CNN interview that he had where he's hit with questions of gray issues and all, in which there's no consistency
Right.
between anything that he says that we can learn about what libertarianism really is, other than just this random collection of positions that he seems to have put together.
I would say that, part of it, I agree with you that that kind of annoys me, but it's also he's not speaking to the people in this room when he's speaking on CNN, and that most people don't think about a single set of principles that will help inform every decision you make. And I think the fruit salad approach, and I'm just saying this as a pragmatic, in a pragmatic way, fruit salad is very tasty. And as long as you like, the grapes and the pear, you can put up with the peach and the cherry, right? And it's like, okay, this is pretty good. And it actually, and I mean, it's fascinating because he is not, I'm not the one who brought up Wayne Huizenga, which, does anybody here know who Wayne Huizenga? Okay, sorry, all right, well, you're a highly informed audience. Was I talking about light syrup or heavy syrup fruit salad? But no, what I'm saying though is that I think that what they are making a realistic pitch to what American voters care about. And they do say things that, and again, I mean, they're not running for philosopher king, they're running for president, and they say things like, we're for choice across the board. Or you're fiscally responsible and you're socially tolerant. That gets at something meaningful in the political arena. But
to directly answer your question, I would say, find the super PAC that seems to have the best messaging and go there.
Oh, and by the way, like Gary's people are all around here.
Yeah,
so,
no kidding. So,
like hector them.
Seriously, hector them. I mean, I think that there is the concept as a selling proposition of we're going to be fiscally conservative and socially tolerant that's 50% of America, more or less, give or take. Polling's going to be right around there. And for those who are described like that, and I'm described like that, in addition to being described as other things, to be in the modern Republican or Democratic Party, you have to lop off half your brain. You just do. I mean, so I have a different idea of immigration than Donald Trump. So that means I have to agree with Hillary Clinton on teachers' unions? That doesn't make any sense. Yeah. And a 25-year-old is not going to be voting for Hillary Clinton because of teachers' unions. She's terrible on this, and they think she's terrible on this to the extent they care, which they don't.
But if they care about immigration, they can't vote for the Republican.
Correct.
So, yeah.
That's one thing. I think that one of the problems in the CNN debate, and I wrote this, in part of the initial kind of stumbling on messages can be that Johnson needs to do a better job of drawing the distinction between here's what I would like in a perfect theoretical world, which happens to be sort of Libertarian Party anchored stuff, and here's what's possible in the world that we live in. He is the pragmatic squish. That's who he is. Everyone knew it going in, that he was going to be that guy. So he needs to draw the distinction. He didn't do a very good job on CNN, but he did a great job a couple weeks later with the Washington Post editorial board, who were trying to get him on the pot heroin thing. And he said, rightly so, in the Washington Post thing, look, legalizing pot is what we can do now. It's on the table. Pot is this, heroin is this. Let's do this thing. And then sure, yeah, we can have those conversations and make a new politics possible to make that happen. But in the meantime, let's do this big thing because it's possible and I'm a pragmatic guy. That's a saleable pitch. He needs to stop being defensive and coming across as defensive about libertarian weirdness and just say, hey, look, I love these guys, but this is what we can do with the politics that we have now. And I think that's possible to do.
Yes, and I was going to say also, but then that's one of those cases that Matt was talking about, where then the Washington Post or people are like, oh, can you believe this guy calls himself a libertarian and he's not for legalizing heroin and giving it, in grammar school vending machines. Yeah. So it's a tough sell, but yes.
I want to follow up on the previous gentleman's theme, but I want to ask a question.
But with a lot of curse words?
In a little bit different way. The thing about Gary that bothers me and I've been a libertarian since 1972. The thing that bothers me about him is not so much the fruit salad approach. It's the fact that when he gets up, when he does interviews like the CNN interview, when he does things like the mock debate, that his answers just don't seem very well informed. He does not articulate his positions as well as he could, as well as the positions that I read in Reason magazine.
Yeah.
I mean, all he has to do is read Reason.com, and he could sound better than he does. And it's hard to do this well. You
Yeah.
need professional, to be a movie star on television, you need professional coaching, you need real staff work, good staff work, to prepare these sound bites for people. And I don't see that happening, and it scares me to death that when he gets in the debates, if he gets in the debates, which you think is a small probability anyway, that he's going to make us all look like jerks. What can be done about that?
You know what? I mean, I don't disagree with you. Like every time you see somebody, you want, oh, why didn't they say this? You know, where's the jerk store line? Where's the perfect zinger? All of that kind of stuff. You know, what I would say again with that, from 2012, you know, we were following Gary the whole time. He was very shaky at the beginning. I know about a week before the election, I saw him at an event at University of Cincinnati, and there were about 500, 700 people in the room, and he brought them to their feet with a legitimately deserved standing O. And he's getting there pretty quickly this time. It took him, you know, the entire race last time, so one can hope.
Yeah, one thing I thought of in watching the CNN thing is that as consumers, we were watching this. We've been paying attention to the presidential race, and the people who've been in it have been acting in it for 12 to 18 months already. This was the first kind of dance with Johnson Welch. So like they're going to have to get up to speed, but I think they also will get better up to speed. But at the same time, that's who he is. He knows he's not the world's greatest, most clear speaker in the world. And so if he's going to be himself, which he is, he's going to have to figure out a way to communicate that elliptical Johnson charm as part of his authenticity. Yeah. And I mean, this is a political year where perceived authenticity matters a whole hell of a lot. So being defensive doesn't help that, but being, you know, kind of awkward openly, while hopefully having better arguments can do that.
And let's, how much more time do we have?
It's 2:27. What are we scheduled toward? 2:30?
Okay, so
Okay.
ask a quick question, and one or neither of us will answer it.
Yes.
I'll change theme then, because your fruit
Okay.
salad theme opened this up.
Yeah.
Nick, Matt, I'm a candidate for governor in 2 years.
Okay.
As a libertarian, but I will run in the primaries as a Democrat,
Cool.
invading the really bad party. I'll lose in the primaries, but hopefully the LP will pick me up in Connecticut for the fall.
Are
Do
you from the
endorse this?
future?
I
You
got
seem
one
to
other
know what's happening. Yeah. No, that's
I got
cool.
one other
Great.
congressional candidate doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Is it a good idea?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Godspeed.
It doesn't cost me anything, right? Do it, man. Do it. Okay, next.
Okay, just a couple of quick comments. The first
Okay,
is,
make one. What's
all
your
right.
best comment?
So my
Top comment.
All right, my best comment is that I remember being around in 08 and 12 with Ron Paul, and there was a lot more activity with money bombs and blimps and, you know, pushing all of that. And I don't see that with Johnson, and I've been pushing people. Why aren't we doing more in this aspect? Do you have any idea why there's not more
I
activity?
think
with
Matt can
Johnson?
talk very quickly about the strategy. I mean, that this is a green room presidential.
Yeah, I mean, they're not.
Campaign.
It's not a campaign. There's not a schedule, or at least they just don't share it with me. But they're going to interviews. It's not this
Yeah.
little fundraiser, that little fundraiser. For the most part, they're trying to get to the 15%, and so they need media
Yeah.
saturation here. And the Ron Paul movement is its own thing. We saw with the Rand Paul campaign, he didn't get the Ron Paul movement behind him. He's not Ron Paul to begin with, but the movement, the excitement, the college tour aspect of it. Occasionally, Rand would have a little bit of that, but Ron Paul is its own black swan, I think.
Thank you. Next.
Thank you for wearing the hat.
Absolutely. Just to end on a high note, I do have the straw poll results. For everyone was worried about, there's a lot of Trump supporters here. Well, Johnson got first place in the straw poll for FreedomFest, then Trump, then Stein, then Clinton.
Oh.
I thought that was curious. And then you were mentioning another poll situation. The four-way poll, Johnson, from yesterday from Marist, Johnson got 13.
Oh, really?
Stein
Yeah.
for 39, Clinton 33, Trump.
Yeah, that's great.
That's the best he's done in a four-way poll.
Yeah, and one of the things that's interesting about the poll numbers, and I know one of Gary's communication directors, is that they have not seen declines in poll numbers, which is a good sign. I mean, it's that, this is a floor, it's not a ceiling, and so I think we'll see some more of that. Sir.
Now, if we consider why Obama was successful against Mitt Romney, is he destroyed him through micro-targeting and a very effective social strategy. If we consider what Hillary is doing, she's hired pretty much most of the folks that Obama hired to run a professional marketing campaign. Thanks to the Guccifer hack, I don't know anybody who read the documents, it was very clear the attack narratives that Hillary is using against Donald Trump. My point here is that in order for us to be successful as a Libertarian Party, we have to get really good at doing two things: grabbing and holding attention. And as part of that, being able to nurture somebody who doesn't know that we exist, all the way to becoming a raving fan. And I'm thinking it's probably too late, but maybe it's not, maybe for the next cycle. Being able to do a better job of segmenting, acquiring these voters, activating them so that they can really be more involved, because I don't see the long-term follow-up. I don't see the email strategy. I don't see the media and the videos that goes in and takes somebody who cares about a Second Amendment issue, brings them up to speed on that, and then brings them into the bigger picture with the right libertarian principles that can really allow us to become a stronger force.
Well, I think you're absolutely right about the future of political campaigns. This is, it's the same way of, broadcasters, you don't want a big audience, you want an intense and an engaged audience. And this is true of all political campaigns. This is something that Mitt Romney, the great business consultant, totally flubbed in 2012. And I suspect that we're probably a couple of campaigns away from the Libertarian Party understanding that it's the individuals you reach are the most important thing, not looking for large swaths of people.
I'll add, we need to end here, that I have had 6 conversations in the last 6 weeks with dudes exactly like you saying the exact same thing who are working actively on the problem. So it feels like there's a lot of different people coming at that with new types of intelligence and expertises, and I think that bodes well.
Everything put aside, I'll just say this, is I think that, and I don't want Hillary to win, but the reason I think she will win is she's got a much stronger sales and marketing front end versus Donald Trump as an example.
Yeah, no, and there's, by the way, and it's a pro-Republican book, but Ed Morrissey of Hot Air has a new book out called Going Red or something. And what he looks at, there are basically 7 counties, according to his analysis, that will change the election. Like whoever wins these 7 counties, because they are the swing counties in places that will flip a state from one person to another. It's a great read because he actually goes and talks to people there. But that is the future of politics. It's not, it's not broadcast ads to people who are asleep in bed. We should probably make a couple of final comments.
Keep reading Reason. It's great. Stay here. No, it's a phenomenally interesting political year. Nick and I are going to take terrible airplane situations and go to Cleveland tomorrow. I'm flying at 11:30 tonight. Can I complain about this for a bit? Yeah. Shifting in O'Hare. But anyways, we're going to be covering both conventions with some of the other recent staffers who are here. It should be fun. We've been intervening in this for a while, and so. If you see a black leather jacket going down the street in blood, you'll know what happened in Cleveland. And just thanks for everyone for coming out and keeping things real.
And I will just close by I'm 52. I've been following national politics, I guess, since 1980 or something. Obviously, this is the most exciting year to be a libertarian, a small L or a big L, but it's also worth keeping in mind that politics doesn't and shouldn't matter. It cannot be the focus of our lives, and that's the selling point of the Libertarian Party. And what we can do is advance the issues and the policies that will make us, and one of the people spoke, our grandkids and the future freer And it's happening independent of politics and in spite of politics, but we should always keep that in perspective too. And this is where I really enjoy the Weld-Johnson campaign, because they actually talk kind of like that. And I think that is the message that will end up helping to recenter politics in America, not in terms of right or left or Democrat or Republican, but libertarian in the sense that politics should not matter very much, and because we just can't afford it, and it's a waste of everybody's energy. So that's what I'm optimistic about. Thanks, everybody.